Hey everyone, and welcome to EduTube. Today, we are going on a journey through time, a journey through the three distinct eras of the internet. Now, this isn't just some boring history lesson, okay? This is the key to understanding a massive power shift that is happening right now. We're going to break down Web1, Web2, and the new frontier, Web3, so you can see where we've been, where we are, and most importantly, where we're all headed. All right, let's dive in.
So let's start with a feeling I'm pretty sure we've all had. You're just scrolling through your favorite app, right? And it feels like it knows you a little too well. That strange feeling that your data, your clicks, your attention is the real currency. Well, that's a huge part of the internet we live in today. But here's the thing, it wasn't always like this, and it might not be this way for much longer.
So in this explainer, we're going to travel through those three eras. We'll start with the super humble beginnings of Web1, then we'll move into the social explosion of Web2, and finally, we'll explore the incredible promise of Web3. By the end, you're going to see why this isn't just about new tech, it's about a huge shift in power, in ownership, and in community. Our first stop is the 1990s. This was the dawn of the public internet. I want you to imagine the shriek of a dial-up modem connecting, the patience you needed as a single image loaded, line by painstaking line. It was a completely different world from the always-on, super-fast connection we just take for granted today.
You know, the best way to think about Web1 is like a giant digital library. A pretty small number of people and companies created websites, and the rest of us, well, we just read them. That's it. There was no commenting, no liking, no sharing. It was totally a one-way street of information. You were basically a passive consumer of content, kind of like watching TV, but on a computer screen.
During this time, websites were built with really basic code, and they were mostly just text and simple images. If you wanted your own little corner of the internet, you might have built a page on a service like GeoCities, maybe with a flashing under-construction GIF. But it was static. You built it, and there it sat. This lack of interaction created a real hunger for something more, and it set the stage for a massive revolution.
And that revolution was Web2. Starting in the early 2000s, the internet transformed from that quiet, static library into a dynamic, interactive, and super social space. This is the web that we all know and use every single day.
So if Web1 was a library, Web2 is like a giant, bustling social mall. Suddenly, anyone could be a creator. The key shift was from read-only to read-write. We, the users, started generating all the content, the blogs, the social media posts, the videos that make the internet what it is today.
This is the era that brought us the platforms that define our digital lives, right? Facebook, YouTube, Wikipedia, Twitter, the whole shebang. It's all powered by cloud computing and accessible from these little supercomputers in our pockets. The defining feature was, and still is, interaction.
But, and this is a huge but, here's the crucial point about Web2. Here's the catch. While we all gained the power to create, we didn't gain ownership. All that amazing content we generate, every photo, every comment, every video, it all lives on servers that are owned and controlled by just a handful of giant tech companies. They build the platforms, they set the rules, they control our data, and they make money from it. And that brings us right back to that feeling from the beginning of being the product. That very problem is what the next phase of the internet is trying to solve.
So, welcome to the next internet, Web3. This isn't just some little update. It's a fundamental rethinking of how the internet is built and, more importantly, who it's built for. It's a direct response to all that centralization we just talked about in Web2.
The crucial new word here is own. Read, write, own. You can still create and interact, of course, but now you can also own a piece of the platforms you use. Think about it like this. If Web2 is a shopping mall where one corporation owns all the stores, Web3 is like a farmer's market where every single vendor owns their own stall and gets a say in how the whole market is run. So how is all this even possible? Well, it's built on a few key ideas we can think of as pillars. First, there's decentralization. This just means no single company is in charge. Power is distributed among all the users. Second is blockchain, which is kind of like a shared digital receipt book that's public and impossible to mess with. This is what makes the third pillar possible, true user ownership. This often looks like things we hear about like cryptocurrencies or NFTs, which are just unique digital items you can prove you own, just like you own a physical object. And finally, all of this runs on decentralized apps or DApps. They look and feel like the apps on your phone, but they're owned and operated by the community of users, not some single corporation. And hey,
If you're wondering if this is just some niche idea, get this. The market for NFTs, and that's just one example of digital ownership, exploded from under $100 million in 2020 to nearly $25 billion in 2021. That's not just growth, that is a tidal wave of interest in the idea of truly owning our digital lives.
So let's just put it all together. You can see the whole journey right here. How we interact with the web evolved from just passive consumption in Web 1 to interactive participation in Web 2, and now to decentralized ownership in Web 3. Control over the platform shifted from individual website owners to a handful of big tech companies, and now, finally, to the users themselves through the blockchain. It all comes back to that core evolution, that one key takeaway. From read-only to read-write, and now to read-write-own. Okay, so we've covered the tech, but why does any of this actually matter? Well, because this fundamental shift in ownership completely changes the relationship between creators, companies, and their audiences. It unlocks a totally new and powerful way to build communities.
Amanda Cassatt, who's a real pioneer in Web3 marketing, she put it perfectly. She explained that in the old world, a company, its customers, and its investors were all totally separate groups, and they often had different, sometimes even competing goals. Web3 completely flips that whole dynamic on its head.
By giving users the ability to own a piece of the project, whether that's through a token or an NFT, Web3 basically collapses those separate categories. A user isn't just a passive consumer anymore. They are now an owner, with a real tangible stake in the success of the project. They're financially and socially invested in a way that just wasn't possible before. And this shift creates this amazing engine for growth. See, in Web 2, when you post great content, you're building value for a platform, like YouTube or Facebook. But in Web 3, when you contribute, you're creating value for a network that you are a part owner of. So when the project succeeds, your token or your NFT becomes more valuable, which means you succeed too. It's a super powerful incentive for everyone to build and grow the community together. So we've journeyed from a read-only library to a read-write social mall, and now to a read-write-own decentralized market. Each step has given us more power and more capability. The real question now is, what are we going to build with this new power of ownership? Understanding this evolution from Web 1 to Web 3 is really the first critical step. So if you're ready to learn how to apply these concepts and really master Web 3 marketing, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on those notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. And one last thing, we'd love to hear what you think. Which version of the internet excites you the most and why? Let us know in the comments below. We'll be reading and responding to our favorites. Thanks for watching.
EduTube, where blockchain becomes easy to understand.